You're experiencing the Authentic Chaos Podcast, an exploration into our inner selves and journeys of self-discovery. I'm your host, Vahagan Yarnosian, and joining me today for the third time is Tessa Heron. She loved it so much she decided to come back, and you know what? I really appreciate it. I appreciate when every one of my guests who joins the podcast, and I especially appreciate it when guests want to come back. Because, you know, we had some great conversations, and I'm excited to see what we have in store for today.
Yes, same. Thanks so much for having me back. I always have so much fun.
And just as a reminder, you are a little off center of your camera.
I don't know why.
It's funny because you keep arranging it, and then you move back to the left.
I'm all the way to the left as I can be. Wait.
Well, as you adjust yourself, what's been exciting you lately?
You know, as usual, a lot of my excitement comes from experiencing the new experiences. And yeah, I'm in beautiful Chicago in the summertime right now.
Nice.
I've been, no offense to Iowa, trapped there for the entire summer. And yeah, I'm just feeling the energy of the city, the chaos, the amenities. Oh my God, so world class.
Nice.
Yeah.
Love to hear that.
So it's been a great change of scenery. Yeah.
Have you
Needed
gotten
it.
any time in the lake?
Yes, I've been in there twice yesterday. It's like a nice ice dip.
It's always good to like feel that connection with, especially on your skin.
So true.
Like we're not aquatic animals, but just like it's part of where we came from. Like we were like probably like proto ancestors were like amphibious in some way, maybe even fish or something. So like our connection with water is crucial. That skin to water contact. Magnifique.
So evolutionary based. I didn't even think about that. We were just fish. We were just primordial ooze.
I always like to think about like the things that came before. Because you know it matters.
Which is why the water quality in Iowa is so bad because of the agricultural industry, which dominates the policy and environmental decisions in the state in their favor. And I feel like it's such a like disservice. I mean, kind of like a fucking like violation of our rights to have water, to have clean water to recreate in.
And
it's disgusting.
Isn't it crazy that the Constitution never talks about like what you actually like our basic needs as like human rights, like housing, food, and water. These are not rights enshrined in in the Constitution. In fact, the courts have ruled in favor of privatizing all of these necessities. Isn't that funny?
It's so bad.
We would rather, and this is kind of like a great transition into what we talking about offline, which I endearingly call capitalism a love letter. Thank you, capitalism, for making it so our water becomes full of full of runoff from fertilizers, and that the only fresh sources of water get purchased by Coca-Cola or the Nestle company to produce the bottled water that we then buy from them. It's so much more efficient this way.
Money to the community, and they're like, "We love you from Atlantic Coca-Cola." Build a new baseball field or some shit. Yeah.
All of our stadiums are named after companies. Like, do you think the Coliseum was named after Caesar's R Us or something?
I know. It really it really takes some of the air out of these events when it's like the, Citibank arena. It's just like, yeah. some of them are a little bit more ridiculous than others. Some of the smaller brands that get in on it.
Yeah, yeah. There's some where I'm like, I've never even heard of this company before, but now it's like our football stadium. So that's cool, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Or
God.
or you'll have things like in LA they have crypto.com stadium or arena or
Yeah.
something. They spent like 40-50 million dollars, some insane sum of money to purchase this stadium back in the crypto boom. And I don't remember correctly, but like I think they like went bankrupt or something. Something happened to crypto.com where now it's just the name of the stadium.
Fuck. So funny.
I would also say thank you, capitalism, for for allowing us to invent creative solutions to problems of your own making, kind of cleaning up your own mess.
Mm.
I was looking through LinkedIn in my in a I guess a moment of weakness. I immediately turned it off because I kind of despise LinkedIn as a social media platform. Even as someone who is jobless, I would rather go like put my resume down on paper and like send it to people than like use LinkedIn, because it's just this. We probably talked about this. This soulless void of a social media platform, even more so than any other that I've seen. But
Oh yeah.
but not to distract from the point I'm trying to make. So my buddy mentioned, like, people are freaking out about all of this AI stuff. They think that AI is going to cause the Terminator. Well, no. Actually, some of us are working on some like problems, like we can use AI to solve food insecurity, which is
Mm.
great. Capitalism enables us to use these new technologies, invent new technologies to solve these problems we never would have thought we could solve. Except food insecurity is a problem that doesn't have to be a problem. You don't need AI to
Yes.
you don't need AI to solve food insecurity. You need a change in the how these food companies, like, what they decide they should throw away. If they decide, like, we produce enough food in the US to feed the whole world. We're an agricultural powerhouse. There's no excuse for food insecurity, let alone in our own country, but even in the world itself.
Mm. I know this is the thing, is that, the water in states like Iowa, where the water quality is so bad that you can't go into it.
Yeah.
Like, it's 90 degrees out, you're standing by a river or a lake,
And you can't go
a
in?
body of water. You can't go in. It's disgusting. Like, you can smell the water, like it's frothing, like it's
Oh,
fucked up.
oh, the
And it's
water,
all
wait,
in
the water
vain.
froths?
Oh my God. I'll send you a video of the Iowa River. It has like a layer on the top of this weird, like, foamy, it's almost looks like oil on water. It
Whoa.
like you can see it. It's disgusting. Like, it's hard to even stand next to. Like, you can't even ignore it. It's like aggressively gross,
Whoa.
bad, and it's all in vain. There's an idea that I could be like, well, we're feeding the world. Hungry people are eating because our water is fucked. Whatever, but really, a lot of the agriculture that's done in Iowa goes to, one, feeding animals,
Oh,
feeding cows
true.
and stuff. A lot of the corn and stuff goes to that. And two, producing ethanol based gasoline, petroleum, energy, slash processed foods and corn syrup and all of this stuff that's actually hurting people.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
but makes some CEOs and board members a lot richer. So
Yes, yes, and they absolutely dominate the political sphere in a lot of, Midwestern states. It's
yeah,
bad. It's bad.
it's crazy how, like, I live in the U.S. A lot of my friends live in the U.S., but like like I've never heard about this situation with the Iowa River. That's like it's like, this is the country I live in, and we'd like to think our water is clean and pure because that's what we're told. But then you have things like this where, like you said, the agriculture controls the policy and controls the regulations, and they can say, nah, this, you know what, I think this stuff is fine for water. It kind of just dissolves and goes somewhere else.
Yes, yes.
And I can totally understand why, there are tons of conspiracy theories about the government putting her, and in some ways they're not wrong. I mean, we were just talking about Iowa, the runoff is putting all these harsh chemicals into our water. We don't know what it's doing to our bodies. Look at Flint. They had lead in their water. They may still have lead in their water, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
And and that's not even the only city that has had lead in their water. There's all this case where, going back to, water is one of the keys to survival. You can't function. You just can't live without water. And so you'd hope that your society would take care of that. Would make you'd pay some money, some taxes. Someone will come and make the water better. Put in regulations to keep the water clean, right? That's what we hope. That's what we expect, that what we're buying into when we buy into this whole societal contract.
Totally.
And it's such a shame.
Yeah.
And sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead, finish that.
I was gonna say, it's such a shame that we choose capital over people, money over humans.
Yes, and also the it's a shame that there's not that direct conflict. It's not clearly generally aware that this is the life that we could have, or this is the choice that we're making in these kinds of ways, as a nation, as a society, as our values. A lot of this stuff is unsaid and unexamined.
Yeah.
And it's just the way it is.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know, to maintain the power.
But why would why would ordinary people not want to talk about it as much? Or do you mean that the powers that be corporate media is insane?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an intentional effort to keep us kind of unengaged or divided, or point the finger at something else. They'll be like, the water's bad because of Mexico or something,
Oh yeah.
Just something ridiculous, just kind of, yeah, I don't know. There's a real surreptitiousness to the way that it's hard to identify the problem, the target for change.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think people think about it. I don't even think people question it, the way things are, and that the way that, these basic human rights like food and shelter and water are not guaranteed. There's an idea that is pervasive in American culture that there are people who deserve things and there's people who don't. And if you don't, have a job, do this paperwork, have this kind of abilities and your physical and mental health, and it's you're not good enough for these basic needs and deserve to suffer, which I think is also a form of social control, to keep that kind of lowest caste in our country entrenched there and keep people there and make them visible. Literally, I think some of the reluctance or the hesitation to just house people is part of this idea that it's no, they don't deserve it. And it's kind of you have to scare people into working, or give people this specter of poverty, that it's that could be you.
It's a constant reminder that if you fall out of line, you're going to be on the street and no one is going to love you.
Everyone's going to walk right past you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I wonder if some of the people that like I count as friends now would no longer be my friends if I was homeless. And I think it probably would be it could be a fair amount. I'm not going to say it is. I'm not going to say a number for certain, but I could see it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And it's
I
not
mean,
because they owe me any ill will or malice, but I think it would just be a revulsion, like a disgust from the proximity to.
yeah,
Like this is
totally. The
someone I
association.
know.
Mhm.
And that proximity like changes everything. Because then it goes from being this spectacle to being a potential reality.
Totally. Totally. And I think a lot of homelessness is misunderstood, that like a lot of people are hiding in shame that they don't have a home, maybe like living in their car or something
Oh
like
yeah.
that. It's not like people are really everyone who's homeless. It's happening to a lot more people than I think people understand. Like, it's not just the people like intense on the street. Like, yeah,
Yeah, and it's not something that people want to talk about because obviously it's very like because of what I just mentioned, you don't want people to judge you differently for like sleeping in your car or like having
yeah,
to like sleep on someone's couch.
totally.
So
And
yeah.
yeah, sorry, this is a PBS documentary advertisement. I was watching a documentary about brainwaves. I don't know what it was about, but exactly. But what they were showing was this classism that we have ingrained in us is actually affecting our perception of homeless people. So, like,
Oh.
yes, they did this interesting study where they had all these MRIs, whatever, hooked up to people's brains, and we're just showing them different images. And when you see a human face, your brain makes some kind of wave that's like, I recognize this as a person. Whatever face they're making, whatever skin color, whatever age, whatever, all these human faces, you kind of just go blip, it's a human. And they also were, as the control, were showing people just like random objects, and so there would be no blip. And when they show people pictures of homeless people, they do the same. The brainwave does the same thing as an object. It doesn't
Oh.
register them as a human. It's just like, oh, it's an inanimate object. Like, we've been trained to ignore people to that extent, that they're to dehumanize people to that extent that it's like literally not tracking in your brain.
So, thank you, capitalism. Dear capitalism, we appreciate how you've instilled upon our minds the concept of meritocracy. America is less a democracy, it's more of a America-tocracy. All right, that worked a lot. I've been trying for the past like month to figure out like a portmanteau of America and meritocracy, and that was my first time saying it,
Oh,
and it did not hit. Did not hit. It sounded
a
like cock in the middle.
meritocracy.
A
Yeah,
meritocracy.
that's great.
Americatocracy. Americatocracy.
The meritocracy is the biggest lie ever. Nope, a meritocracy. Yeah, that's such a lie, though. I mean, so much of everything about your trajectory in America is like predetermined.
Yeah. By by the zip code you were born into.
Yeah, and people love the exceptions. People are like, "Well, that's not true. Look at this one guy," and it's like,
Yeah.
"Yeah,
I love
but it's
reading.
95% true."
Yeah, but like if you look at the statistics, you're basically like saying like, "Oh, look, someone won the lottery, so everyone must win the lottery, right?" Like it's America.
Totally.
In America, you win the lottery. That's literally what people are saying when they're saying like meritocracy is a thing and that you can like elevate your socioeconomic status like
Mm,
that easily. You're basically betting on as rare an event as like winning a jackpot.
totally.
But because of that instilled belief, it makes us think that like, oh, if I work hard enough, I can do better. And if I'm not doing better, it must mean I'm not working hard enough. And if other
Right.
people are doing worse, it's obviously because they're not working hard enough. But, we see contradictions all the time, and we just say, like, oh, the system is broken. Like, if we'll see people who, like, maybe we didn't perceive as working hard enough, but got further ahead. And we'll be like, oh, they're rich. It's an anomaly. And then sometimes you'll see people that are doing more but are further behind. You'll say, like, oh, well, they just got unlucky, rather than saying, like, oh, maybe meritocracy isn't actually a real thing in this country. You'd say, like, oh, no, these are just exceptions. I'm not changing how I view the world, because how I view the world is clearly correct.
Right.
And
Right.
there's incentive for capitalism to keep a meritocracy around, because, like I mentioned, if you think that the more you work, the more success you'll get, why not work harder? You'll produce more for your employers, because you know that, or you believe that you will get ahead in life if you do so.
Mm-hmm. Ahead in professional status and salary.
Right. Because we don't even consider life to be anything but, like, what you do and what your position is.
And the costs of prioritizing your work and life and salary are just like things that are intangible, that just don't have a lot of high priority for people, or don't really make the calculation for the trade-off. Just like the energy that you have for your friends and family, volunteering, being connected to your community, so much. And I know that we've talked about this already at length, and you've talked about it on your podcast a bunch, but like, so much of the script and the routine that people are in is this 9 to 5 work day, where you kind of like come home, you're tired, you make some kind of meal, you watch some TV, you go to sleep, and you're back at work the next day. And this kind of like, and people I think end their workday with just a sense of like, depletedness.
Yeah.
Which civic engagement is hard, community engagement, family engagement, like there's all those things take more social energy that people expend way too much at work.
And then they have less time. Yeah, they have less time for their communities, their families.
Learning things, unionizing.
This is America. We don't do unions anymore.
Yeah. I can't wait for for everyone to start bitching about their TV show quality. That should be a big one.
Yeah, both the writers' strike and the actors' strike.
It's awesome. I swear to God, the teachers need to get in on this. The
social for sure.
Need to get in on this.
Yeah, I think
like, everybody strike.
I think this, like, people should take this momentum and, like, fight, because I've seen a disturbing trend of, like, all of these, like, companies, like, now that COVID is behind us, they're trying to revoke all of these freedoms that they've given workers, and a lot of people are just going with it. But, like, I say fight back, because if you don't fight back now, then it's not going to get any better.
Nope. It's totally the frog in the boiling water thing. You're just gonna like repeal this stuff real slow. All of a sudden, you're back in the fucking office, working there, commuting,
and you'll have less amenities. You'll have like more of a probably more things to do, because with layoffs, the amount of work doesn't go away, just the amount of people to do that work. So, of course, you're going to be expected to do more work. And why would they expect you to do less work in the future? Like, that's never going to happen. Because, thank you, dear capitalism. Thank you so much for providing us the philosophy of endless growth. If you put your mind to it, you can just keep going higher. You can keep growing, keep expanding, keep growing, keep expanding. And if you ever stop growing, that's bad. Someone has to suffer.
Oh man, I kind of love that ideology though.
Of constant growth.
That's kind of, I mean, I obviously think about it in a different way than the application to capitalism, but
How do
yeah,
you
I
think
kind of
about
think
it?
about, well, a lot of the things I pursue, I'm not necessarily trying to get great at or pursue, I'm not trying to pursue things in a capitalistic or achievement kind of model. I'm really just doing it to grow, like just like practicing different things,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
writing, like that's those are things that I just do uh, to just get better at slowly, and I count that as a success.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think that there is like a lot of value in growth, especially in like when you're trying to go like learn something new. Right? But I also think that the concept of endless growth isn't very
Mm.
mindful be-
Oh, sure,
because
sure.
a lot of
Kind
it,
of in the
huh?
capitalist quarter system, like every quarter should be a growth, right?
Right, right.
Like each quarter, yeah, yeah.
And if you we like to take a lot of that philosophy and put it into our own like internal like mindset and like judge ourselves from it. So there's like
Mm.
growth mentality is a big thing these days, right? Like people want to talk about, oh, just like push yourself to your limits constantly, keep growing, keep growing, keep growing. But then the question is like, well, you don't have as infinite limits as a corporation. You are your time is already being split in a lot of different ways. Your energy is being split, and when you hit walls, it's a lot harder to. Sometimes it's hard to get past those walls. And I, what I see in a lot of people who focus on a lot of growth is that when then the question becomes like, what is enough? Like
Mm.
how? At what point do you stop? What do you do when you stop growing? Because at some point you will stop growing. And if your whole mindset was this growth
Mm.
mindset that you need to grow to improve, to like be happy, what happens when that stops?
Yeah, I can tell you from personal experience. This is something that I've actually been struggling with this summer a lot because I've had some health problems that have caused me to be on restrictions for a lot of the summer. Most of it is that I ruptured my eardrum, and I have all of these limitations in what I can do. And so much of what I enjoy, like I'm like, oh, I'm practicing getting better at swimming. I can't do that anymore. I can't do like weightlifting. I can't do anything with a lot of exertion. And to have those moments of growth taken away from me, it's been a real difficult thing. I don't know how to analogize that to like corporate behavior.
Well, we
But
don't have
it's
to analogize it. We can just talk about your experience because that's actually really interesting. Not many people in my audience will have experienced a moment where they something stopped them from growth.
Yeah, yeah. It's been interesting. One of the it's one of the things that I felt like I had kind of figured out. Like I was like, I can maintain my mental health anywhere, anytime. I've been traveling. I felt like I was so versatile. I
Yeah.
felt like uh, I had mastered something. And to the point that I have even like quit drinking. Like I just don't drink anymore. Like my mental health is just like
Oh wow.
good. And I'm
Good for
like,
you.
damn, like I just don't even care about alcohol anymore. I still drink occasionally, but it's just a lot less frequent and kind of default in my life, I guess. But yeah, so then just kind of having to come to terms with these like physical limitations. I just have been like the transition from being able to do whatever I want whenever I want physically to being limited has been difficult to process mentally. Like it's that interlinking between the physical and mental health. Like I've been
Yeah.
feeling it, and just not having my physical outlets has been a drain on my mental health. It's been exhausting, which, yeah, has put me at a standstill.
Have you thought about like how have you been coping with it or do you feel like I don't know, how have you been trying to
I've
cope with it?
I've been trying. This is hilarious because I've been having like conversations with my doctors about this too. I'm like, I'm like looking for ideas here how to manage my mental health, and um, they were like, one doctor actually started talking about alternative therapies, and I was like, "Are you talking about mushrooms, man?" He was talking about Zoloft. He was talking about anti-anxiety meds. I was
Well,
like,
of course he's not going to talk
no.
about mushrooms.
I talked to him about mushrooms after that, though. I was like, look
Nice.
into it, man. Not as a recreational drug user, just as someone who is in the mental health research field and understands that like there's a lot of medicinal qualities to psilocybin, you
Oh
know.
yeah.
Oh yeah,
I mean, people have
but
been using it for countless generations. Like,
can it be commodified? Will be the question, or will it be bastardized into a commodified, pharmaceutical thing?
I
But
think you know the answer to that. So thank you, dear capitalism. Thank you for making it so much more efficient for us to get access to things that are naturally produced in like the places we live by selling us the things that we had growing and that we could grow ourselves in conveniently accessible ways. Thank you so much. Makes it so much more efficient.
appreciate it. Love paying someone for these naturally occurring
Life is
medicines.
always more efficient with a middleman.
Yeah,
Ideally,
right.
more middlemen, the better.
Yes, more paperwork also is good. More administrative burden, rules,
but
fulfilling your
like let's chat
goal.
about mushrooms a bit because you know I'm like I have an interest in mushrooms too. Uh,
Yes.
so what what kind of like research have you seen that like inspires you about
It's something that's so good for trauma because the way that trauma works is it hardwires these neurons in your brain that get you into this flight or fight response all the time, like during your daily life, which which is something that really limits people's executive functioning and like ability to like make informed decisions when you're always under this like your most intense reactionary state possible. And yeah, I mean, this is the brain science of what trauma is. It's these like hard hardwired neurons just like firing all the time, which causes a lot of suffering for the person experiencing it. And the idea with like using psychedelics as like medical therapy assisted kind of substance is that you can actually like intentionally rewire or strengthen other pathways in your brain that are not this trauma response all the time. So
yeah.
it just like changes people's lives that they have a lot more control over their thoughts and reactions. And I think people don't understand that so much of this like kind of behavior that we see from people who are mentally ill is totally trauma response. And
Yeah.
it's erratic, it's scary, people are like, ah, put him in jail, I'm scared. And it's just like simply because they have a lot of trauma, and it's actually very recently has been defined as a human rights violation for someone with a mental illness, a disability rights violation for someone with a mental illness to be treated by the criminal punishment system,
Yeah.
to be met with that care of policing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's so great that we're finally starting to recognize that because like it's such it's like infuriating that we as a society we've accepted that mental health is an important thing, but when we see people suffering like mental health crises like right in front of us, we're like something is wrong with them, like they are bad people, like we need to get rid of them.
Oh, hell yeah. It's crazy. If you
Yeah.
start digging into like the relationship of society with its most like vulnerable citizens, people, if you ask questions and get down to it, people who are really like hard line, like these people are their own faults, you know, whatever, they deserve this because of this, whatever. It's really scary. It's really like, oh my God, like you actually think they don't deserve to be alive. Like you actually think like this, it's weird. It's bad. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
ugly.
it's like saying, like, looking at someone with a broken leg and being like, we should shoot them. Like, they are no good anymore.
Exactly. It's totally like big eugenics, like in a different like way that is way more like societally acceptable. It's so true. I know. I really exactly like I really can't find enough ways to like illustrate the parallels to people about like mental illness and physical illness and how like so one of the interesting things about it is like mental illness has social implications, right? Part of the symptoms of the illness is social. Like you're talking to yourself, you're acting erratic, there's paranoia, there's aggression. These are social symptoms, you know?
Yeah.
And so they invite a lot less empathy and sympathy. So somebody with a broken leg might be sitting there in a wheelchair, looking sad, being like, "I broke my leg. Don't you feel bad for me?" And people are like, "Yeah, we do. Let's make your environment accommodating. Let's make it so that you have curb cutouts so you can get around with your broken leg. Let's change the actual environment to accommodate your disability, right?"
Yeah. We
And
don't
then
do
with
anything
mental
like
illness,
that
it's
for.
like, yeah, with mental illness, it's like, I don't understand what the fuck is wrong with you, and you are going to jail. Like, it's
Yep.
like that is the environment response to mental illness, you know?
Yeah. Treatment by cop.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So going back on the psilocybin thing and also tying in
Yes.
this whole mental illness. So, like, I think there are a lot more traumas that we live with that we don't recognize as traumas. And one that I've been personally living with, trying to outgrow, and it's been a struggle, is like the whole idea of a scarcity mindset versus abundance. I think
Yeah,
scarcity mindset is a trauma. It's trauma
totally,
created
totally.
through like the inefficiencies of capitalism and the inefficiencies of like not having and the struggle of being able to survive at like a young place. Like yeah, growing up, I definitely had a lot of scarcity mindset, both in the religion that I grew up in, but also like the means of my family. Like, um, it was made like money was a constant reminder in my life. So if I grew up with this idea of scarcity, and now that I'm trying to get now I'm trying to get post scarcity because I've learned that like a lot of those fears, a lot of those insecurities show up in really bad ways for me. And like take me out of myself, make me less grounded, make it hard for me to appreciate like my relationships or certain
Mm,
interactions or the place I am because of my fear of having less and then not getting being able to get more. So thank you, dear capitalism. Thank you so much for the blessings you give us of scarcity, making us hungry dogs to constantly fight each other to hopefully get pet by the master.
totally.
And I think things
I,
like that
yeah, so
psilocybin
interesting.
can really help with, just like it can help with like like more like readily accepted and maybe debilitating traumas. The ones that are less debilitating can also be explored through.
Yeah. Yes, I think it's interesting. I think the word trauma and the discussion of trauma is something that is so like stigmatized, you know? It's something that's also become kind of casually tossed around like, "Oh my God, it's the Starbucks barista pronounced my name wrong. It's
So
so
traumatic.
traumatic." Yeah. And
Yeah, yeah,
and then it's like,
yeah.
so many people like dismiss it completely as like a thing. It's just like, get over it or whatever. It's
Yeah.
like that's like going to war is trauma, that's trauma. And
Yeah, like grow a pair, sissy. Like you didn't die
yeah.
for your country, blah blah blah. But like, yeah, but like we live through very real experiences through our whole lives. Like, of course, we're gonna deal with traumas through there. No one's life is perfect.
Yes, and the result is this different way of thinking, that your thinking is already one tracked into these trauma responses of taking you out of the present. People don't even notice it. I
Yeah.
think, easily the pandemic is a trauma that everyone experienced. It was a long-term
Oh yeah,
trauma,
and it like
you
affected
know.
the society in like huge ways. Like changed how we interacted with each other. Like literally changed what kind like certain industries, certain like events. Like beer fests don't happen as much, and like that really hurt the microbrewery like scene. Like less microbreweries were able to come out. So thank you, capitalism, for making it so that these global diseases can result in massive changes to how we live our lives because we don't have any support for when we need the safety net the most, and it is full of holes. Not so helpful.
Yeah, and the fact that our pandemic response was completely guided by measures of capitalism.
Oh
They're
yeah.
like,
Oh yeah.
well, we gotta get the economy back, so we probably should return to work soon.
Yeah.
Like,
Literally, people were saying like on TV, like, "Hey, I'm okay if like grandma and grandpa die if it means that
yeah,
we can get back to Starbucks."
totally, totally. I mean that shit was really real, and in Iowa too with the agriculture industry. I cannot emphasize enough how powerful they are in the state. There was this big moment when all of these, cattle who are being harvested for the meat eaters, they were on this timeline during the pandemic, and they were like, well, if we don't, process, slaughter these animals in this time frame, like they're all just gonna like die, and they're gonna be worthless, and they're just gonna be a loss of uh,
They're
capital.
resources, they're not animals.
Yes, and so right. I mean, right, but yeah. So the governor like forced. I mean, there were some jobs that were exempt, or during that like whole, especially that first like 2 weeks of the public health emergency.
Yeah.
A
When
lot
no one
of
really
people
knew
were.
what was going on.
Oh, everyone thought everyone was going to die,
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
the governor forced or excluded meat packing plant workers from any kind of like labor
Oh.
exemptions. So the meat packing plant workers, you can guess who those people are. They're not white people,
Yeah.
you
Yup.
know? And yeah, and the governor forced those people to go into work, and it was like especially when the town is kind of rural, it's like half the town works at the meatpacking plant. So it's like everybody's going to be exposed to this deadly virus at the time that we all thought we were, literally going to die from. And yeah, yeah, it's crazy. It's just like, how can you do that to people? But it happened,
Yeah.
And this is our, yeah, current governor. Yeah, she's
So,
crazy.
thank you, capitalism, for making it easier to see people as resources and resources to extract labor from.
Yes, and the depths of exploitation possible. I never really imagined that it was possible to like value some profit over an animal, over like a human life. But it
Yeah.
is.
Oh, it.
But
Yeah. They find a way. They find a way. And a lot of it does come from that view of like, well, those who have more, those who are worth more, are thus more valuable people and more human. Those who
mhm.
have less are less human. Simple
and
as.
and it's important to keep people in a position where they need that job so bad that they're not gonna be like, no, I'm not coming to work. That's a health hazard.
Yeah.
You know,
Because if you
it
lose
was
that
important
job,
part.
your mortgage is at risk, your health care is at risk. Like, sometimes maybe your citizenship is at risk, or like your visa is at risk. Like there's a lot
Yeah.
of risk to losing a job.
All part of the equation when they're just like, yeah, no, go to work. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I'd say that one of the most like you said, we talked about this a bit earlier with the writer and the actors strike going on right now. Full support of. Like, I think people need to realize that if you are a worker, if you are a laborer, you are against your employer. Your employer is incentivized to give you as little as possible, to make your conditions as bad as possible, extract as much value out of you as possible. So you are playing a losing game if you aren't fighting back and getting as much as you can out of your employer. It's unfortunate, but like unions were one of the only ways, are one of the only ways that like workers can get anything.
Yeah. Yeah. We need to have a general strike. 100% solidarity. Nobody go
Yeah.
to work. Maybe on election day 2024. And the demands include paid vacation for everybody.
Yeah. It's nuts that
Like,
we hardly
yeah,
get much paid vacation. Even at the best places, people talk about taking like 4 to 5 weeks, like for the whole year. Like that's like bare minimum in Europe. And we're talking about like, this is like the best of the best spots in the US.
totally. Oh, you're right. I know. And I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking when you were talking about like the transaction and the power dynamic between you and your employer. It's like, man, when I think about like some places that have all these incredible benefits, it's like that just makes it even more crazy that like you're still losing. The
Yeah.
value that you're
Yeah.
bringing is still beyond all of those benefits, like just your body, your mind, whatever you're selling or whatever you're providing that company, like
It's got to be
it's
worth
worth
much more than that,
it's
right?
worth more.
Yeah. And like
Yeah.
we're taught to like devalue our own self-worth. And like this is something that I had to kind of like come to terms with in dating life too, that like I wasn't valuing myself very highly, like both like in any context. And because of that, like I'd sell myself short, and like because of that I'd accept poor working conditions because I
Mm.
thought that was what I was worth.
And people, we all reinforce it too, right? Just think about like
Yeah.
how replaceable you are, just I guess in the idea of like breaking picket lines, it's like, yeah, this with the writers and the actors is kind of all interesting with AI as kind of a scab. but
AI will never be able
yeah,
to create though. It will only be
mm-hmm,
able to like to pull from the past, but it won't be able to do anything ingenious.
right. Hmm.
And
Yes.
I think we as people, like dear listeners, please value yourself higher. You are worth more than your labor. You are worth more than than the things you tell yourself about your own limits. You're worth more than your scarcity mindset. And I am running low on battery. So, do you have any final thoughts, Tessa, before
I
inevitable
agree.
demise?
No, yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah, double ditto, like, yeah.
Well,
No,
thank you
you
so
summed it
much,
up.
Tessa, for joining. It was so much fun to talk, and we'll definitely have you on again.
Yes.
And thank
Talk
you.
soon.
Yeah.
Good luck.
And thank you for listening. If you're listening on YouTube or Spotify, please like and subscribe and share. Follow us on Instagram for more updates. And as always, embrace your chaos with kindness.